Okay, hi everybody. So welcome. We've got another question and answer class here on our text. So I'm just going to start for auspiciousness and blessing with the Heart Sutra. Homage to perfection, wisdom, the Blessed Mother. Thus I've heard at one time the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgir and mass vultures mountain together, the great assembly of monks and nuns and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. That time the Blessed One was absorbed in the concentration of countless aspects of phenomena called profound illumination. That time also Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great beings, looking perfectly, the practice of profound perfection of wisdom, looking perfectly also the five aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Then the power Buddha Venerable Shariputra said to Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to engage in the practice of profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke in Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, replied to Venerable Shariputra as follows. Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of the lineage wishes to engage in the practice of perfection, profound perfection of wisdom should look perfectly like this. Subsequently, looking perfectly and correctly, also the five aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, and form is not other than emptiness. Likewise, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, having no characteristics. They're not produced and do not cease. They have no defilement, no separation from defilement, no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, and no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mentality, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no tactile object, no phenomenon. There is no I element and so forth, and up to no mentality element, also up to no element of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so forth, up to no aging and death, no exhaustion of aging and death. Likewise, there's no suffering, origin, cessation, or path, no exalted awareness, no attainment, also no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there's no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide in the perfection of wisdom. Their minds have no obstructions and no fear. Passing utterly beyond perversity, they attain the final nirvana. Also, all Buddhas reside perfectly in the three times, having relied upon the perfection of wisdom, became manifest complete Buddhas in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, unsurpassed mantra, the equal and unequaled mantra, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, since it's not false, should be known as the truth. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is proclaimed, Tayatum Gata Gata Paragata Parsam Gati Bodhi Soha. Shariputra Bodhisattva, great beings should train the profound perfection of wisdom like this. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration, said to Spirit for the Bodhisattva, the great being, that he'd spoken well. Good, good, outstanding lineage is like that. Since it's like that, just as you have revealed in that way, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced, and Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra, Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, the entire circle of disciples, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, demigods, and spirits, were delighted and highly praised what had been spoken by the Blessed One. Okay, there we go. So, Kadro, thanks for coming today. Really nice to see you, and it's an honor. Kadro's one of my teachers, so always when your teacher shows up, the pressure's on too. So I hope honor you here with your presence. So thank you so much. So yeah. Anyway, opening up the floor, and any questions, comments, concerns, anything interesting, or as always, I'm just looking to offer these discussions or questions and answers just for the material way of sharing and going deeper with this. Of course, all the while saying that myself, I'm not an absolute expert with this stuff. And so again, we've got some great practitioners here. People can share their own experience as well and make comments and stuff. Yes, Natasha.
I wanted to thank you for the emphasis on language and shifting the view of renunciation as giving something up versus definite emergence. And I really like that language. That was really helpful.
Yeah. That's a good one, and that's it's not just obviously Lama Yeshe. And again, remember, this is an older book from the 1980s. There's probably a lot of right across the traditions. Like I'm sure if you even get different Dharma books, let's say in the Theravada tradition or Zen tradition, you'll get different takes on that. And so I know I'm not too sure now because he's older now. Alexander Berzin did a lot of he's really, really good Dharma teacher, as you know, and he's done a lot of things where he would try and gives sort of like a different conceptual understanding of different terms. Like, sometimes it works, sometimes some people kind of make fun of it. Like for refuge, he calls it going in the safe direction, which is a little unwieldy, but that's a good way of looking at it. So definite emergence. And then I know Trungpa Rinpoche had a great thing where he said, like one thing, our teachers, Azar Rinpoche said is that renunciation, like a sign of renunciation, you just want to do dharma all the time. You become more and more spiritual. So rather than again like letting go of stuff, it's about taking up something. You're just more interested in doing dharma. So it's not like a negative thing. And so Trungpa Rinpoche had a great line. I think it's in Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, where he called renunciation letting go of holding back, which is a great thing, because you can see like on different levels, deeper levels, we're always still holding back or scared or being, so he's like, it's really, really letting go on a deeper level that way, letting go of holding back. And that's a good way. So thank you. Mm.
Matthew,
Mm.
I also was reading or listening to Lama Yeshe's book, and he referenced it as sort of outgrowing
Yeah.
your obstacles, and for me, I thought that was really that really resonated with me, because I found over the years that working at letting go became a little bit of a I made a job out of it, so to speak, and so the sort of outgrowing of it allowed me to sort of take my time and do it in a kind of evolutionary process. So it was, yeah, that language also was helpful to me.
Thank you. That's excellent. And I think evolutionary is the term to use. I think even Lama Yeshe says it, and I know it's in maybe in his Vajrasattva book, where all of this change is organic, like it's like growing. It has its own logic and time, and kind of like you have to, just like you can't rush growing a garden or even rush cooking if you want to make it, let's say, a good pie or something like that. It takes time. And like I say, we have all these kind of unconscious images and our own kind of presuppositions and assumptions. So, renunciation, we have an image that you have to be some sadhu living in a cave, or renouncing things in a very cartoon Christian way, that things are evil and have to be thrown in the garbage or purified or burned away or whatever. And sometimes, like you said, these kinds of things hold us back, these kind of presuppositions or assumptions, right? Or yeah, good. Thank you. Anything else? What do you guys think? Because I'm in retreat, I was going to do just a class actually yesterday. I just got too busy. The next one's we're getting a little class on bodhicitta, on emptiness, as sort of like the three, again, sort of big foundations that you need for tantric practice. So the last one I just did was on renunciation. So if people want to comment on bodhicitta too, or emptiness or something, that's good. We can. Mm.
Good morning, everyone. Matthew, I want to ask another question about emptiness, if this is okay.
Your questions are always good and they're always hard, Elena. So thank you.
Yeah, it's another hard question. I'm not sure if you can comment on this, but I would be very grateful if you can. I noticed kind of a phenomena that when I start new practice, it's like beautiful, it's great, and it's so blissful, and I'm doing this, and it gives me so much pleasure and inspiration. And then like some time after, I feel like, oh, it's like a little bit like a plateau, and I don't feel the same energy that I felt at the beginning of the practice. And I noticed this like in different situations. It's not related with one practice. It's just like a pattern. I do something new, it's great, it's blissful, and then then after some time, I mean, it's not blissful, but it's not that beautiful like at the beginning of the practice. And I'm trying to like go back and like, where is this beauty? Where is this power that I felt at the beginning of the practice? Is it like something that many people experience, or it's something like personal? So yeah, if you can comment on this, it'd be great.
Sure, I'll comment, and then if other people want to comment or add in, please do. I have that experience a lot. I certainly had it when I started, and there's a lot of different ways of looking at that. Like I think when you've got the novelty of a new practice, it's always exciting, but it's always, I think even Trungpa Rinpoche talked about this, that kind of like your ego is running interference, like trying to make everything safe and a cliche. And so when something's new, it's exciting and blissful, but it's also, you'll find that your initial experience of working with the practice, you'll get results very quickly at first, but then it starts to run dry as you get used to it, becomes habitual. Sometimes it can even be a little bit boring. And, you know, the more sort of deeper emotional defenses you have, it's their interest in maintaining everything exactly as it is in your life. And so you'll find that there's sort of, you'll be putting your own obstacles in the way in your practice that way. And that's why it's good to shake it up a little bit, try some different things or come at things from different angles. I don't think it's you know, sometimes people accuse like people in Tibetan Buddhism where it's just like you're jack of all trade, master of none, because you do so many practices. There's so many deities. Why don't you just stick to one thing? Like, you know, whatever, you're in Soto Zen, you just sit there, the black cushion staring at the white wall, this kind of thing. But with, you know, a lot of Tibetan Buddhist practices, I found I've done so many different practices over the years, it keeps things fresh and you hit things at different angles that can really, really help. So if you're using one thing that's working for a while and then it stops working, rather than keep using it where it becomes almost like an empty ritual, or like you can't shock yourself into changing, or you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like you know what to expect. It's nice to sort of shake it up a little bit and try something a little different. And then um, you know, my own feeling anyway is that how do I put this in it? Like getting good results where it's blissful and pleasurable, that's good. But at the same time, once the purification of the practice really starts going, your practice becomes difficult. But that's a sign that it's working. So it's like a detox, like you take some cleanse thing and it might be flavored with sugar and it's like it tastes good. Oh, this is great flavor. And then you take it and then you're like, oh my goodness, I've got cramps, I got diarrhea, like whatever. Like, you know, and it's the same thing with practice, is that if it's going well at the beginning, that's great. But that's, I don't want to say superficial, but for things to really work, they have to get difficult because you're getting rid of really, really strong problems and delusions and obstacles, everything in your life, and dismantling your ego. And so when you're doing retreats or practicing, all these difficult emotional problems are coming up, that's actually a good sign. So it's not like your practice isn't working, it is working. So we always, Kandro Rinpoche, one of our teachers, Christina's teacher back in the 1990s especially, she always said, anytime you meet people that said they did a retreat and it was all amazing and blissful, she's like, whenever someone tells me that, I always think it didn't work because you didn't go in deep enough. Like if you go in the retreat and you have a nervous breakdown and you're angry, you have all these stuff, then that's the traction, that's the friction point on the clutch where you're actually doing the work, right? So I've got friends like that, whereas every time I talk to them, oh, I had this suspicious dream, everything's good. I'm not saying I'm cynical and don't believe them because they're probably better practitioners than me. But when I meet people, it's like I did this retreat, oh, it was so difficult and I had all these problems. I'm like, okay, good. It really worked. Then you really did it. Anyone else want to add to that, or what do you think? Mhm. Christine?
Yeah, I'm a person that had to practice almost entirely as a solitary practitioner. I've not lived close to a sangha ever in the course of my practice, and um, so what I think is that thing that you're talking about, Elena, is very much helped by being in a close to a sangha that shares your practice or is familiar with your practice. That it speaks to the excuse me, it speaks to the importance of a sangha, and I think, and so yeah, that's just it goes back to the three jewels almost in support of that sort of dilemma, so to speak, to get over having a group that you can share that kind of feeling with.
Mhm. That's good. And maybe even having a bit of a virtual Sangha here, we can support each other. So you're always, it's kind of like a team. You have your teachers, but you also, I always think it's nice, to have really good practitioners like yogis and yoginis, people doing a lot of practice or retreat, that you can have these kinds of really good, feedback and checking in with one another. So it's just this support of, oh, we're on the same page. We're doing this journey together. It's like a big hiker bicycle expedition that we're doing. But it's also, a lot of times you can't talk to really high teachers because I don't say you can't sympathize with them, but they're just so far ahead of you, and you're like just sort of a beginner, right? So it's nice to talk to your classmates, so to speak, where it's like, what's working, what's not working, you know? Because it's very sweet. Like, let's say when we did, Christina did the Jimmy Gassa, the 108 Springs retreat, wandering retreat, that almost killed us. And I talked to Rinpoche and oh, it was great. It was so easy, but well, of course it's easy for you, right? Like, so it was fun talking to our other friends that have done it, like let's say Bill and she, and Bill's like, oh my God, like it was so hard and we had a good laugh. So it's nice that's what Sanga's for, is one of the three jewels, is having that kind of a resource, right? So
Yeah, the inclusion of the virtual sangha has literally changed my dharma life. I mean, it's made an extraordinary difference for me. So really grateful for that.
no worries. And we all made it through COVID and all these other things. And we're so lucky to be able to have, our teachers, people all over the world we're connecting with because of this. I mean, as much as technology has its downsides, we're so fortunate to have this. So, Natasha, do you wanted to say something?
What Elena was talking about reminded me of something you said many years ago about not having doubt when we're doing Tantra, and how doubt is the main enemy of Tantra. And I've had long, long periods of rote practice with my main yiram, just sitting there, put your body there and do it, right? But not, not feeling that inspired. And then it kind of feels like an ebb and flow, right? And it comes back, and just trusting that sometimes it's what's happening in your personal life, right? And that changes and shifts and re-energizes, and it comes back, right? And it's like a relationship, right? When you first fall in love, that energy is there, and it ebbs and flows, and it comes back, and you work with it. But I think the Sangha is really important. So thanks for
That's
that.
excellent. Thank you. That's really wise. And I think that's good to say, because it is like a relationship, obviously, with your yidam. That's supposed to be like that way. And I think a lot of times it's just, what is it, 10,000 hours or something? It's just putting the time in. So you can see, in our culture where everything has to be entertaining, everything has to be new, everything has to be different than what it was. This idea that, let's say you run a Zen temple and it's like you have the service and everyone sits every day at 7 a.m., day in, day out for years. A lot of people are like, well, why would I do that? That's so boring. But that's where the real improvement comes, because it's just like one step after another, because as you're walking up the mountain. And like you say, it depending on your personal life, it's just a roller coaster, your practice. Sometimes it's really flat, and sometimes it's amazing, but you can't. A friend of mine was very sweet. He was saying, "Oh, whatever." It was giving me some kind of probably exaggerated compliment or something. But what he was saying is that I can see when we talk how much, um, let's say all these years of practice, what a difference that's made to you. Like you probably don't see it because it's too close. But the fact is the day in, day out stuff over so many years, that does add up. And that's all karma is. Like Ajahn Chah, that famous Thai monk, he always said, really, karma is it's just where you're applying pressure or energy. And he's like, if this is where you're putting, then that's what's going to happen. If you start over here, this part over here stops and this part over here increases. It's just kind of like that. So we just have to do that with our Dharma practice all the time. And the good thing with Tantra is it gives you all the techniques where you can apply these kinds of yogas to all different aspects of your life, right? So your whole life becomes your practice. As you know. But thanks so much for saying that, Natasha. That's really, really good. Mhm. Mm. Any other comment? Maybe something on renunciation or some stuff from the beginning of the book? Anything on bliss or dissatisfaction or anything like that? So. Mhm.
Matthew, would you remind me exactly where we are in this book? I think I might have gotten ahead of
Well,
myself.
it's just what the last kind of class I did was on well, it's the chapter called "Emerging from Dissatisfaction on Developing Detachment." So it's on the chapter that he talks about renunciation, and the next one I've got all the notes on it. I'm just going to record it probably early this week. Is opening the heart on bodhicitta, and then there's stuff on emptiness, of course. And then he's going to get into a little bit on Tantra, where it's like clear spaciousness of mind, color, what is it? Clarity, color, and bliss. We're going to skip the part here on page, at least this book here, 111, basically chapter 10, entering highest yoga Tantra practice, because this class is just going to be an introduction Tantra to Kriya Tantra. So we're not going to talk about the higher stuff. And then at the end of the book, there's a chapter on that I like, which final accomplishment, the fruit of tantric practice. We can look at that one. There's also, oh yeah, the tantric personality part. I'd like to sort of talk about that a little bit. So again, this part here that we're looking at is again returning to the three principal paths that we get in the sutra: renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom realizing emptiness, as the main foundation for Tantra. And like I've said, in the Gelugpa tradition, there's different ways of practicing Tantra in the four schools of Tantric Buddhism in Tibet, right? Nyingma, Kagyu, Sakya, and Gelugpa. They all have their own little flavor, right? So when you're in the Nyingma tradition, it's the nine yanas, for instance. And they draw a bit of a sharper distinction between sutra and tantra, not in a stupid way. Of course, I don't want to sort of give sort of a cartoon version of that. But they have a different way of presenting that. And in the Sakya tradition, which I know very little about, but in the Lam Dre teachings, you're taught, sort of more what we would call Lam Rim, or the three principal paths, but in the context of tantric practice, or they said is like sort of what it's like to be a yogi or yogini going into Tantra. And what we do in the Gelugpa tradition is the unity of Sutra and Tantra. In other words, once we're even practicing Sutra, the three principal paths of renunciation, bodhicitta, wisdom, realizing emptiness, once we're keeping our bodhisattva vows and doing all this practice, we will start creating a pure container or environment that's not just the foundation for Tantra, but it starts giving you tantric experiences even before you go into Tantra. So you sort of can't separate them out. And the whole while you're practicing Tantra, you're still applying all your sutric teachings. So my friend Bill always said, Tantra's, what is it? Tantra's where you want to be, Lam Rim's where you are, in the sense that what I've always found is unless you're dealing with very strong, I would say magic or psychic issues in your practice, which happens, most people's obstacles or problems with your tantric practice always comes down to Lam Rim problems or sutric problems. Either a lack of understanding of a certain concept like karma, let's say, or what your vows are doing, or obstacles you have with bodhicitta, equanimity, loving kindness, or just renunciation issues. And so people would say, oh, I'm having this problem with my teacher, the tantric practice, but you can sort of follow it back to, oh, it's because of this sutric issue that's the problem. And when that gets cleaned up, all of a sudden your tantric practice improves. Now, then other times people have high level energetic problems or psychic problems or spirit issues or whatever, then that's more of a tantric problem. But I think most people, I know speaking for myself, a lot of times it's a sutric issue that way. So Jamyang Khyentse, I think it's Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo or his reincarnation, Jamyang Khyentse Chogi Lodro, in the first part of the 20th century, he had a kind of a cool thing where he said, with the different schools of Tibetan Buddhism, it's a question of perspective. It's the same thing, but it's how you look at your journey. So he said in the Sakya tradition, all of the teachings are from the standpoint of being a yogi or yogini in retreat. So that's the perspective. He said in the Nyingma perspective, everything's from the perspective of an enlightened being, what a Buddha sees. And he says from the Gelugpa perspective, everything's from the perspective of a sentient being walking to enlightenment. Kind of interesting. So he said it's kind of interesting in how you approach your tantric practice. What perspective are you using on how you see your own journey, right? I thought that was helpful. And you can see they're quite different. So. Mhm. And thanks for the chats there, the comments there. Thank you, Cadro, and thanks for Eduardo. Okay. Anything else? Comments, sharing? We don't have to go the full hour either, like if it's stuff, and that's no big problem there. So Lori, Maureen, anyone want to share or say anything, Alyssa? Not to put anybody on the spot, but
I'll just say that my biggest problem always has been doubt and impatience. And so it's been really useful to read this book and attend this class. And I don't really feel like saying too much because I feel really crappy. But yeah, if it wasn't for Sangha being close to me, I wouldn't be doing this. So I really, hats off to people that can do this by themselves at home. I'm not a very social person, but I also am quite undisciplined. So it's really helpful to hear other people's questions and comments, whatever. So I'm glad to be here as usual, even if I don't really want to be here.
well, thanks for showing up. And it is early in the morning, at least here in the West Coast. So thank you.
Oh no, I'm an early morning person. It has nothing to do with early morning. I love that you do this class at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's the best time for me. It's just not great this morning. But anyways, this renunciation business and looking at it from Lama Yeshe's point of view and the questions and stuff has been very helpful because I have to go back to the beginning over and over and over again. So great. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. And that's it. We're all here to support each other. Like I say, it's hard because you need Sangha because this stuff is so few people do this stuff nowadays. And so it is, and it's not like we all grew up in a Tibetan Buddhist culture, but even in Tibetan Buddhist culture, like let's say when I went to Tibet 15 years ago, no one's doing this over there either. So it's not like you're sort of in a bit of a minority position doing this kind of. And then as you go further on and go deeper with your practice, there's less and less people in the world you can talk to about this kind of stuff because it's
Yeah.
so different. And so you really do need your Sangha support because who else can you share this with? And then if you have issues, like even when I go to therapists or Chinese doctors or whatever, I've got, a lot of different healers that work on me. I can't talk about this stuff so much. Like if you have a therapist and you're like, what's your problem? Well, okay, whatever. I have a problem with my mom or something, but I can't say, well, I have doubts about my tantric teacher, or I keep having these nightmares where I'm attacked by evil spirits or whatever. They're just like, okay, I'm calling the psychiatric nurse right now, and you end up in the hospital. So, you can't, maybe in the old days, different cultures, you could share this kind of stuff. But in our culture now, yeah, it's really, really, so we do need each other kind of as a team of people to support one another and share this kind of stuff and do the journey together, right? So, yes, Lori?
So I have a question. I've been struggling. There is a longtime friend of mine and Dharma practitioner, and she has an adjacent practice of Native American spirituality. And she's doing ayahuasca and ketamine and pot every day. Well, not pot every day, but other things are more uh, rare. But like ketamine a couple times a week, including psychedelic ketamine. So she's getting other members of the Sangha involved in this. So I feel very, I don't want any to do it. So so there's also problems within the Sangha. I think it's her right to do all that, and that's her journey. And but I don't know. I mean, she's a very good friend of mine. So problems with friends in Sangha. I mean, do you have to renounce that as well? What do you
That's
think?
that's a hard one. So
Mhm.
and other people can sort of chime in here, with their own opinions or views on this, which is good. But I find with uh, a lot of my Dharma friends and Sangha friends, what I find funny is that um, the issues you would think, like on outside people looking in, the issues everyone would say is, oh, I'm sure everyone's complaining about their teacher, everyone's complaining about their practice. And I'm always like, no, 90% of the time, everyone's complaining about each other. Like, as any Dharma community, just like any church, you go to like some evangelical Christian church or some synagogue. Do you have problems with the rabbi? No, you have problems with everybody else, right? Maybe sometimes you have problems with the rabbi or the priest too. But I'm always, what's funny is that I have friends in other Dharma traditions, and I'm always talking them off the edge too, because everyone's always fighting in the Sangha, like on the different governing boards, or everyone's fighting with the patrons, or whatever, or just the general community. Like if like whatever, you talk to Tibetan people, Mongol, in the community, everybody's fighting in this and that. So that's just normal. I don't think that that's anything in every Sangha or church has its own different kind of karma, right? So that's normal. You're always kind of running interference with that. And remember, like I was trying to tell people, like, okay, we're all trying to get enlightened, but people aren't enlightened yet. So everyone has their shortcomings and issues. And
Mhm.
Trump always said you have to put yourself in that terrible middle thing, where, in other words, you're not the lone wolf doing everything on your own, and you're not the blind sheep herd animal follower. You have to be right in the middle where you're part of the community, but
Mhm.
you're struggling with everybody, right? Like Martin Heidegger has that great line in Being in Time, we are here to quote unquote struggle and communicate. Two words, struggle and communicate. So that's the friction that makes you a better person and makes you accountable on an ethical level, and working on your ego as you're stuck in this community fighting with everybody and having issues, right? But at the same time, nowadays, I find it difficult because, in a good way too, but everything's getting mixed up, all different spiritual traditions. So in a lot of ways, it's good because we have access to so many amazing, interesting traditions and teachings, and they fill in gaps we might have where our system maybe isn't complete or something else can be helpful. But at the same time, everyone can get mixed up too. So when I say this, I always come off sounding like an old-fashioned Orthodox sectarian person. I'm not like that at all. Of course, people know me and they know I'm not like that. Like my one friend that's Jewish says, you're like one of these old Hasidic ultra-Orthodox Jews in some basement in Brooklyn with two other rabbis reading some text that only two people in the world understand. I'm a little like that. But I'm not closed-minded. But I always say that a lot of times when you start mixing in too many things, you lose sight of what you're trying to do. So when we're doing tantric Buddhism, but then we throw in ayahuasca, then Sufi dancing, in Rumi's poetry, and then we're doing yoga, and oh my goodness, now we're doing breath work or stuff like that, people's path becomes a little mixed up and they don't know where their main focus is. And I always like to say, because sometimes I just like being a jerk and pushing people's buttons, what's wrong with just keeping things simple and keeping things boring, right? Like, why can't we all just, like, I always find nowadays, and again, all these traditions, ayahuasca, all these, they're amazing. People get so much help and benefit from them. So I think that that's great. But there's a little tiny cynical part of my mind because I have so many friends that do drugs and even do all these amazing psychedelics and when they find all these scientific tests on how all these things help people and stuff. I'm sure that's true. But I always think there's a cynical part of me that where we want entertainment, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I can't just sit at the Zen Center watching my mind. I have to do it on LSD, or I have to be hooked up to something, or I have to, like, whatever, be watching YouTube. Like, it's not enough just to do my practice. I have to be on some cleanse. I have to be astrally projecting at this. Why can't we just, like, sit and watch our breath or do this mantra work? Do we need to be distracted or diverted? Because it's difficult. And some people, not all, but I know some people were just like where they hear, oh, if I take this psychedelic, it saves me this amount of work in my journey. So it's like I should do that. I'm not saying that's what your friend is doing or anything, Lori, but I'm just saying I see this. Uh, I might have told this story, but it was during COVID. Maybe in the COVID in Vancouver, I was at one of the cafes I go to and I was reading and this young man sat beside me. I could tell he was like some Dharma guy. I could just tell his energy, right? And it turns out he's some Vipassana teacher. I think he might have been part of Goenka's group. And sorry for repeating myself. I told the story a few times, but this young guy came and sat with him and they were having the interview. And it turns out that the young guy that just arrived is seeing whether he should do this Vipassana retreat. And so the guy, he was asking questions and then the teacher was telling. So then the guy said, well, can I do LSD during the retreat? No, you can't. Okay, can I, whatever, do my juice cleanse during the, no, you can't. You just said, okay, can I find my power animal? And it was just, I mean, it was just like a comedy skit. The guy was going down a list and then the teacher kept saying, no, you're just sitting there watching your breath. And I felt like being the jerk, like, excuse me, hi, I'm a Dharma teacher sitting beside you. But I felt like saying, this dude is not coming to your retreat. Okay. Right now, he is not, because it sounds so boring to him. He wants something sexy and entertaining. The idea of just being on the cushion watching your breath, there's no way he's going to do that for 10 days, I can tell. But that's precisely probably what he needs.
Yeah.
To be in a situation like Pascal says, where we have to be alone in the room, just with ourselves. And that's the hardest thing to do now, which is why we always have our phone. We're always diverting ourselves, right? But I don't know what to do. I mean, that's between you and your friend, Lori. Like if everyone the sang is running around doing ayahuasca, I'm not going to say that's good. I'm not going to say that's bad. In the end, you have to sort of just find, in terms of your own journey, what's helpful or not. But being the devil's advocate, I'm always like, what do we think's missing here? Why are we looking for something else outside of ourselves or our mind or our practice? Why do we have to divert ourselves? Why do we want something sexy and entertaining? Which is why a friend of mine who was Tibetan Buddhist was always critical of Tibetan Buddhism. He always called it Star Wars Buddhism. Like we want the rainbows and the magic powers and the bikinis and the psychic stuff. Like that's why we're here. We don't want to just be with Goenka's group sitting on the cushion watching our breath because it's boring, right? And we love all that stories. Like I led a retreat in Toronto and everyone goes, tell us more stories. Tell us more magic stories about llamas. And I'm just like, no, the whole point's just this isn't just to sit here and tell everybody magic stories. That's not why we're here doing this, right? So anyway, Natasha, you gonna
Yeah, well, you kind of answered it, but I felt that Lori's question had a bit of a the ethical dilemma as those, we're doing Tantra, we took our Bodhisattva vows. What is our responsibility to our other Sangha members, right? If we see that they're at harm's way, do we intervene or is that going to create more harm? And what can we rely upon to come to making those decisions?
Yeah. That's a good question. And ultimately, it's probably for the leader of the community, your teacher or senior members to make a decision on that. And this happens all the time with every community in terms of what are we doing about money, buying this, doing that. Oftentimes there's politics, as you know. Sometimes things can get really, really messy. And then sometimes you realize, oh, okay, everyone is going this way. I can't go this way. Like, even though I'm still part of the Sangha, whatever, I want to go this way, or I can't follow what everybody's doing or whatever. Everyone, And I mean, I've seen this because I've been in the Dharma so long. I've seen a lot of times Sanghas do this where they fall apart or split or bring different things, or other people are just like, okay, I'm out. Everyone's doing this. Not for me. I don't think it's right. And then everyone say, okay, you're fired. Okay, well, I don't know, like that happens too, right? You can't fire me, I quit, right? Right? So, anyway, yeah, it's hard. But again, that's part of, again, struggling and communicating because you're working with other people. And it's really, it's really like my one friend, she's part of the Kagi community of Vancouver. I'm not gonna name them. It's really good, but it's always the same thing. She's threatening to quit every week over all these kinds of I was just like, oh God, whatever. Right? So this guy got a sense of humor about it. But anyway, so
Well, I think that's that's sort of where the teacher enters as such a valuable element, and the availability of teacher and senior students and stuff like that, because they can support that person, Lori, that is trying to sort out how to do that. I mean, being a solitary practitioner, that's happened to me with Rinpoche, more than once, that he has just said, no, don't do that. Keep it simple, stupid, kind of, So it's been so much easier for me to stay on track with his support, even though I was so often alone. So I think that, Laura, your teacher can help you and make peace with that very good friend of yours. And I don't know, it might be worthwhile to just sit down over coffee with your friend and say, love you very much, but won't be doing that. So
that's good. Thank you. Excellent.
Can I?
Pedro, yes.
Hey, Matthew, thank you for providing this platform. I'm really impressed and feel that it's a very important place, so to speak, virtual, that what I've heard so far, it seems that not everybody is feeling so great about their practices, but they're actually talking about their experiences, right? Of what happens when they do this and what they've discovered on their own. And that discovery was shared with the group. And in some ways, I think they were given some assurance that the practice is fine You're not doing it wrong. There is no wrong. And it's normal to sort of have this great one-time experience. And then after that, your expectation is like it's going to be like that every time. But it's not going to be like that because it all depends also on your your own state of mind, what's going on in your environment, and what are the things that you don't see that are in the back of your mind that is actually clouding the information you're getting, which is maybe not high up there, but sort of down on the ground where it's actually making you realize that this is what I need to do. I need to sit here and work through this. Eat like there's a little saying when, with my grandkids, we kind of laugh about it. We're playing, how do you eat a mountain? Yeah, one little bite at a time. So this is this big Dharma mountain. How do you eat it?
Mhm.
So thank you for sharing and thank
Oh,
you for
that's
the space.
fabulous. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And one thing I see, Cadro, it's true, like, Western people, like more, because we're always coming from a Judeo-Christian background, we've just got this life. So everything has to be accounted for in this life. Everything has to be finished for in this life, this and that, right? You as a person, then whatever, you go to heaven or something. But in more traditional Buddhist cultures, people look at things in many, many lifetimes. And
Exactly.
so there's a wisdom in that. And just chipping away at this.
Mhm.
It's like with Tantra, we're trying to get everything done quick, and even the context of this lifetime, and that's wonderful. That's great. But again, we don't know how long this is going to take us because it's so difficult. But a lot of times in more Asian contexts, but it's people just like every lifetime, I'm adding a little bit to this. I'm chipping away at it slowly but surely. I'm sort of heading towards enlightenment. And I have sort of like the bigger picture. I know His Holiness the Dalai Lama said that a few times that you have to, this is the more sutric thing where, think of
Mhm.
three great aeons, but he's always like patient, do it
Yeah.
properly, take your time, pick up where you left off next time around, right? And I think it's very, very good to look at it that way. And then also just sharing your experience. So, it's that one philosopher, Slavoj Žižek, made it popular, but it's actually a quote from Samuel Beckett, which is try,
Mhm.
fail, fail better. I don't know which play or text that Samuel Beckett, but
Mhm.
ironically, back in the 1960s, Suzuki Roshi said the same thing. Someone said, "Oh, my practice sucks. I'm like hitting the wall on this," and then he always said, "You try, you fail. You try, fail." This is then you go deeper. Then you go deeper. So the try, fail, fail better. What's happening is you're learning, like your practice is getting deeper
Yeah.
as you're doing it, and that only comes by actually applying your effort all the time, bit by bit. And that's why in a lot of ways it's a whole, like you said, Cadro, it's a whole thing you do for your life. So my friend Marco that ran him and his partner Mona that ran the Institute of Traditional Medicine in Toronto
Mhm.
for many years, he had once, I've always remembered this. This might have been 10 years ago or something, can't remember, probably longer. They had some Cree elders come and do some big ceremony there. And then at the end of it, there's a lot of people came, it was all excited. And then they said, the people in the audience said, "Can you please teach us these healing ceremonies at the school, these First Nations?" And the old
That's
elder
true.
guys were like, "No." And everyone's like, "No." And then it was fascinating what these guys said. Marco told me, it's not like, no, because you suck, no, because you'll never learn it, whatever. They said teaching these rituals is kind of irrelevant because he said, the one guy said, being Cree is a way of life. In other words, these rituals are an expression of what we're doing every day, living our life every day. So if I give you the ritual outside of my life,
Mhm.
it's not really going to do anything. The key is to live this life.
Agree.
That's, I feel, what your tantric practice should be. Like if, let's say, you're a Vajrayogini practitioner or whatever, a Yamataka practitioner, it's not like doing the puja once in a while. Oh yeah, hey, I'm doing it. Like, it's every day living it. And then, of course, from a tantric point of view, you become that
Yeah.
at a certain point. Then it's just, this is what Tara is like or Yamantaka is like all the time.
Yep.
So you see, I think that's the thing, but you have to have that patience that comes with that of living that kind of life.
Mhm.
You know,
Thank you, Matthew.
and,
Exactly.
and
We
that's
said
what
it earlier.
Eduardo said this here in a text as well.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, he said that as well. Like he said, just staying with the path, committing, because the depth that can be achieved is a matter of time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're
You
sort of
said earlier,
coming up here.
Matthew,
Mhm.
that you need to live your practice, be the practice. You're not just doing it on the weekend for an hour or two, and then the rest of the week, you're totally unconscious that this is who you are. So becoming that practice, or like the Cree person saying, yeah, be the Cree, so be the practice. Yeah. So I think you're right. And thank you.
You're welcome. And so,
But
like, I feel what's funny is that oftentimes, this is more the emptiness thing, is we can bring in a little
Yes.
bit of good old-fashioned existentialism here, is that it looks like you're real in this real world, and then you're pretending to be Green Tara. So it's hard because it's like I'm pretending
Yeah.
in Green Tara's Pure Land of Ulacode or whatever. But the point is, who you are right now is a product of your imagination. It's just as fake as Green
Mhm.
Tara is. That's
Mhm.
what you have to see. And so living your life as the normal worldly identity you have, going to your job and all this is a mandala, a fake mandala or whatever, an active literature, whatever you want to call it, just as much as Tantra is. That's what you want to see, except one's diluted and contaminated and full of problems, and the other one isn't,
No.
right?
Yeah.
So it's switching over that way. Why is this full of problems? Because it's based on delusion, not an understanding of emptiness, no bodhicitta, just self-cherishing. But the point is, the life you have now is fake. It's not real, right? You're just switching the object. It's important to see that. And why should you switch it? What's the necessity? Well, one's not working. The life you have right now is not working, and we know how it's all going to go. So it's a question of like you say, being Cree, living your life as a work of art. Just switch the artwork in a lot of ways. One's a crappy sitcom that just keeps repeating that sucks, whatever. We want to make it a lot better and a lot more sublime. So I think, Elena, were you going to say something? Did you have your hand up or?
yeah, just want to ask. So I
Yeah.
heard that some people they're doing different practices. Let's say the Yamantaka in the morning,
Yeah.
Vajrayogini in the evening, and then how they should be the practice. If it's like there are two deities they're practicing, should they
Well,
be like, let's say Yamantaka in the morning, and I do like I'm Yamantaka in the morning, and like how it works?
Well, remember, there's different. This is a little bit bigger question here, but and this is
Mhm.
an ongoing, sort of a famous pedagogical issue in Tibetan Buddhism, right? So, technically, to keep your habits going, you have all your tantric commitments where you have to do little practices of everything you've been given every day, so you have access to that energy when you need it. But every what your main deity, what they call a yidam, or sort of, it's almost like your main practice is almost like your main relationship, I guess you could say, your sort of beloved object, so to speak. That's your yidam, and that's your main practice. And so it uh, Atisha, the famous Indian pandit that came and taught in Tibet in the 11th century, he always made fun of Tibetans, and I think it was kind of like what he was saying. I don't know. I wasn't there, of course, but it's almost like when you get in Tibet and Mongolia, go up to Siberia, where they're more shamanic cultures, there's all different spirit helpers that you rely on, right? So oftentimes culturally, you'll have that where people have all these different practices they're doing at the same time. And what Atisha said is that coming from India, from more of a Hindu background, everything is divine, everything is God, and there's countless different what they call doorways to God, but you have one practice that you do. You funnel everything into one. So it's like everything is God, but my focus is Kali or Shiva or Parvati or Lakshmi or Krishna. That's the main thing. And what Atisha said is that it's just, it focuses the energy better. You don't get distracted doing a million different things. So he made fun of Tibetans at the time, where it's just like, yeah, every 15 minutes you switch the date. I'm doing Yamataka now. Now I'm doing Kalachakra. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing that. And he's always like, how do you know what your practice is? How are you going to get ahead and improve if you're just diverting all your energy across this wide horizon of a million different things? He said, do it Indian style, where it's just one that you do and keep it simple. Okay. Now, I'm not criticizing people that do a lot of different practices. And if your skill level is very high, you can. But if you're changing your focus all the time, a lot of times it can get distracting where you don't know what you're doing. And part of the problem is that a lot of these tantras, the methodology is different, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
wow, this channel's red. Now it's blue. Oh my God, there's one little green guy here. Now there's a red guy over here. And it's just like, it's very easy to get confused. Where if you just stay with one,
Mhm.
but what we were talking about earlier, sometimes that gets stale. So you have to know the wisdom and the skill to switch it up, maybe do something else to fill in a gap or change your perspective a little bit, and then you can go back to your main yidam. But that's what a yidam is. Otherwise, you're like you say, jack of all trades, master of none. And I've met people like this. I don't want to be critical, where they do a million different things in Tibetan Buddhism, but it's so superficial. Their practice, there's no power when you meet them, there's no juice. We have some people, it's just like all they've ever done is this one thing, and they're so powerful because they've done it for decades. And it's like, wow, they're this amazing, they've done green Tara forever. They're just like super powerful. And that's kind of like the good way to do it, right? So, Natasha?
Yeah, I don't know if it's okay to skip ahead and ask a question about something later in the book, or you'd rather wait.
If you want, I mean, if it's short, if it's a big, once you
Okay.
ask it, we'll see, because it's 9 o'clock already. You don't want to go too much,
All
but
right.
just
No,
quickly, just put it because we can come back to it. What's the question? So,
it's to do, I didn't realize that weren't going to address all of the text, but it's about Lama Yeshe's discussion of transforming the energy of delusion in everyday life into the path, right? And bringing the energy into the central channel. So when he talks about desire and attachment, and how instead of that being something diluted, it can fuel the path, right? Fuel, and I'm wondering about um, delusions such as anger or hostility or aversion. How does that become part of the path? I don't understand that.
okay, so that's an amazing, gigantic question. So even if I wanted to answer that, number one, I'm not an expert on it, but number two, we could just be an hour just on that. So let's save it to the next question and answer, and we can talk about. So the two things is we won't talk about highest yoga tantra. One, because I feel I don't have highest yoga tantra realization, so I can't put myself on uh, a level where I feel confident enough to teach that things. And when we're talking about central channel practice, that is Anuttara Yoga. That is highest yoga tantra. Whereas I'd like for this introductory course us to circulate around Kriya Tantra. So Kriya Tantra, we're just working with coarse minds, not our subtle mind. We want to give everything central channels because we want to activate our most subtle mind of clear light. Kriya Tantra doesn't do that. It's just working on a little bit more of a course level, right? But nevertheless, all tantras work with transforming delusions into wisdom. So let's talk about that. There's a lot of great books on that. There's a lot of things. And that's always the problem, is almost on a Lojong perspective. How can I transform my mind? Like if I'm doing all this practice, everything's trying to be pure, and yet I'm overcome by desire. I'm overcome by anger. What you see with your tantric practice is superficially it makes everything worse because it jacks up the energy in your body. So when you get angry, you're angrier than most people are angry. When you get horny, you're 10 times hornier than everyone else in the room. Right. So you start to think, is this making me a worse person? Because it's like my delusions are stronger than anyone else around here. Am I becoming crazier? Right. But you're not. That's how the purification goes. But that's like a deeper conversation. So how about we bring that up next time? You can remind me and we'll have a longer chat on that. Does that sound good? Okay, so I want to keep to the schedule here a little bit. It's been about an hour, so let's wrap it up, and we can just take a moment to dedicate this. Blessings of all holy beings, the truth of karma, the power of pure spirit intention, may all Dharma wishes be fulfilled, and dedicate all of our discussion and sharing for the enlightenment of all sentient beings. Okay, I'm just going to press stop here for the recording.